Green paint, students mix yellow paint with blue paint. The table below shows how many yellow and blue drops from a dropper several students used to make the same shade of green paint. So let's start by changing this to be quarters. This is 3 2/4. So when we add that, that's 8 3/4 total. But we can figure out what fraction of the total that is. So 3 1/2 is the same as 7/2. And we want to figure out what that is out of the total. 8 3/4 is the same as 35/4. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 3 more makes 35. Then we can flip it and multiply. 7 goes into 35 5 times, 2 goes into 4 2 times. So the yellow is 2/5 of the total, and then the blue has to be 3/5, so that way the end can make up 5/5 total. So out of 5, we need 2 parts to be yellow and 3 parts to be blue. This 6 3/4 makes up 3 of the parts. So if we take 6 3/4, which 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 more makes 27, and we split it into 3, or multiplied by 1/3, which is the flipped over version, we get 9/4. 9/4 is also the same as 2. That's just one of the parts. So then we need to multiply it by 2 to get the piece that's 2. So times that by 2, we get 9/2, which is 4 1/2. Then for this one, we want to split it into 2 equal parts and then multiply it by 3 to figure out what this one's going to be. So 6 1/2, 12, plus 1 more makes 13/2, divided by 2. Or we can flip it over and multiply. That's 13/4. And then we need to multiply that by 3 for the 3 parts that we have here. 13 times 3 is 39/4, which is 9 3/4. Now we need to figure out the totals. So this one is 6 2/4. 6 plus 9 makes 15, but then we have an extra because we would have 5/4. So 16, and then 1/4 is going to be left over. Here I have 6 and 4 make 10, but 1/2 and 3/4 is going to bump it up to 11. So 11 1/4. Part B says write an equation to represent the relationship between the amount of yellow paint and blue paint. So if I start with my yellow, I would need to divide by 2 first and then multiply by 3 to figure out the blue. You may also write this as a decimal. 3/2 is 1 1/2. Number 3. The ratio of the number of miles run to the number of miles biked is equivalent for each row in the table. So 3 plus 7 makes 10, so that'd be 10 1/2. To figure out the ratio, 3 1/2 is half of 7. So we may have to go and divide these by 2 to figure out these ones. So 5 1/2 divided by 2, or times 1/2 will tell us how many miles. 5 1/2 is 11/2, which comes out to be 11/4, or 2 3/4. All right, let's do the same for this one. 3 1/3 can be written as 10/3, because 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 more makes 10. And then we want to divide it in half, because half of that would be the miles, or times it by 1/2. Divide it by 2 or times it by 1/2. 2 goes into that 5 times, So we have 5/3 or 1 2/3. Another relationship you might see that if we double, 3.5, we get 7. So if we double 2 and 1/8, we should get our answer there. So 2 and 1/8. 2 times 8 is 16 plus 1 more makes 17. And then we want to double that. 2 goes into 8 4 times. So we have 17 over 4. 4 goes into 17 4 times with 1 piece left over. So 4 1/4. Now we want to find the totals for these ones. We could make this be 2/4, 5 2/4. 2 plus 5 makes 7, but then we have 5/4, so we have to bump it up to 8 and 1 piece left over. 4 1/4 can be rewritten as 4 2/8. So that would be 4 plus 2 is 6. 2/8 plus 1/8 makes 3/8. 3 plus 1 is 4, and then we have an extra 3/3, so we actually end up with 5. Okay, so what's happening is if this was 1, this one has to be double it. And then if we add those two, we would get 3 parts. So we're going to split 6 into 3 parts, and that gives us 2. So each part is 2. So the 1 part is 2, and 2 parts of 2 would be 4. B, what is the relationship between the distances biked and the distances run? So the biked we're going to label B, and the run we're going to label R. If you double R, you get the bikes. 2 times 2 is 4. 3.5 times 2 is 7. Oops, that one, there we go. 4, the following table. Oh, my pen. The following table shows the number of cups of milk and flour that are needed to make biscuits. Complete the table. So 12.5 plus 15 makes 27.5. The relationship between milk and the flour. Let's see. It looks like those both have a factor of 5, maybe. But with 12.5, we might have to do multiply by 10 to get rid of that decimal. So this would be 125 over 150. And then you might notice that 25 can go into both of them. 25 goes into 125 5 times, and into 150 6 times. So the milk is 5 parts, and the flour is 6 parts, for a total of 11 parts. Notice this 11 right here, we can fill in 5 for the milk and 6 for the flour. So that is our relationship. Now, looking at the milk, if the milk is 5 parts, and we divide it into those 5 parts to figure out how much each part is, then we can multiply by 6 to figure out how much the flour is. So 5 goes into 7.5, 1.5 times. Then we need to multiply by 6 to figure out how much the flour is. And 1.5 times 6 is 9. 9 plus 7 is 16, so we have 16.5. For this 10.5, we need to split it into its 6 parts to figure out how much each part is. 10.5 divided by 6 is 1.75. And then we need to multiply each part by 5 because there's 5 parts that go in the milk's position. So times that by 5 and we get 8.75. For a total of 19 1/4. Not a 24th, a quarter.